Hello everybody and welcome back to the Bayonetta 2 walkthrough. It's time for Chapter 8, An Ancient Civilization. Now, as I said in the last part, basically Chapter 8 is kind of... the plot stuff that happens is split over two chapters, so Chapter 8 and Chapter 9 basically cover the same thing. It's a bit... I'm not a fan, to be honest. I would have preferred just complete everything in the single chapter. Would have been a lot nicer, I feel.
This is... Welcome to hell, love. Too late to repent.
These are the gates.
Whatever your friend did to get on the other side of these, let's just say she's not having a good day.
No, she isn't, little one. But she'd still be alive if she hadn't wasted her life saving mine.
Huh? Well, she doesn't seem like such a bad friend after all. Fimbulventer can wait for now. I'm opening the gate.
Well, thank you.
Oh, I can't just leave you at a shuttered gate after your sob story, love. Besides, who's gonna save you if our stalker decides to show up again? Alright, let's do this. Try to keep up.
So, here we are at the ruins of lost memory. And we can begin this rather ridiculously long bit of the story. While there's a lot of gameplay going on, it's arguably one of the less interesting bits because you're basically just repeating the same thing over and over again. It's a bit depressing, really.
Aren't you in a hurry?
Either way, a seal. A seal. That which is used to keep what is dangerous or important from the reach of others. When the human world was still new, they say there used to be entrances to Inferno and Paradiso all over, but with time they were almost all destroyed by the followers of God. Yet other entrances were too large to be torn down by human hands. God sealed these gates away in almost impossible to reach areas, some so high that only his eyes could see, and some far, far under the water's surface. He created impenetrable barriers around the doors so no one could ever enter. If you think about it in another way, this means that those entrances still exist. They've simply been sealed away. And as they say, seals are made to be broken. If the door's locked, all you need to do is find the key. Although, I suppose the first problem you have to face is actually finding one of these gates in the first place. And, as you should know by this point, we've found one of them. Also, I believe it's at this point... or it's going to be relatively soon that I'm going to start using Undine, as I should be. Now, with the cutscene that opened this particular chapter, a lot of people thought, oh, there's a plot hole, because Loki mentions Jeanne, says whatever your friend did to get on the other side of these, let's just say she's not having a good day. And people are just like, well, how does he know about that? And what people seem to forget is that in the cutscene where Luca is talking to Bayonetta, he brings up about Jeanne. And at that moment in time, Loki is a squirrel sitting in Bayonetta's boobs. So, he did hear about it, so he knows. But here we have Greed, who is basically the demonic version of Fairness and Fearless. He's just sort of kind of like Cerberus, in the sense of kind of three-headed dog type thing. And, oh yes! Love it when I get a pure platinum without kind of planning to. Now, before we move onwards, despite the fact that Loki's going to kind of keep saying, "Where are you going? What are you doing? It's this way." It's probably one of the most frustrating things about Bayonetta 2 is that when you've got characters kind of running about the area alongside you, they generally get really pushy. And it's just like, I know what I'm doing, you little sod. Just shut up and let me get on with my job. Thank you. But either way, we've got a Muspelheim here amidst a lot of kind of pots which are excellent for just getting some extra halos. And so, this Muspelheim is use enemy arms, but this time it's the demonic arms. Now these swords are arguably the best kind of some of the best demonic weapons, because they're very powerful and very quick. However, you are not going to be able to use all of them. Or, you're not going to be able to use them to kill your opponents. And I would say that the gun is incredibly powerful, it's just really, really, really slow. So you need to be so careful if you're choosing to use it. And when you get to greed, just pick up the swords and use them, because it makes it so much simpler. So much simpler. I have to say, this chapter's opened quite brilliantly, surprisingly. I wonder how long my pure platinum streak is going to last. Probably not very long, knowing my luck. Something that I kind of quickly want to bring up is that one of the things that a lot of people have as a main problem with Bayonetta 2 is that it has such a huge focus on Loki. And really, he sort of ends up taking away a lot of the important stuff that Bayonetta has. Because, like, in the first game, Bayonetta was kind of central to the plots, and even though you had Cereza, kind of the two work together because, spoilers, Cereza is Bayonetta. When she was younger, just kind of taken out of her time. So even when you weren't focusing on Bayonetta, you were still focusing on Bayonetta. Whereas here, Loki does take away a lot of Bayonetta's limelight in terms of plot importance. She's just kind of here doing stuff, and isn't really meant to be here. Anyway, angels and demons. While we call our own kind in this realm humans, we also give names to the inhabitants of other worlds as well. Beings from Paradiso are angels, and the creatures of Inferno are known as demons. Sometimes they're the focus of our worship, and sometimes they're the source of our fear. You might not be able to see them, but have you ever felt their presence? Their worlds are right next to ours. Sometimes they're standing right beside us. We're told that they're watching over the human world, but they've been sighted plenty of times as well. There are people who actually have the power to see these angels and demons, looking at the descriptions and pictures they leave behind. We usually see angels depicted as punishers of evil, who lead the pious to a land overflowing with pure light. Demons get depicted as humans who have died unfortunate deaths, or fallen angels who are reborn to spread death and suffering, which is most likely get their bad reputation from their association with demons, even though the Umbra are just as human as we are. And when it comes down to it, we possess qualities of both angels and demons, while constantly doing anything to accomplish our own selfish ends, which might make us the most terrifying creatures in existence. Which is terrifyingly accurate. Like, my god. The human race is terrifying. And, I mean, if you look at the state of the world today, that just goes to prove it. It's just... oh, God. Now, another thing that I feel is apt to talk about right now is... obviously we're heading towards the gates of hell and the real gates of hell. But one of the big things that is important in Bayonetta 2, well, Bayonetta in general, is Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, or in its proper Italian, Divina Commedia, which basically follows the poet Dante as he kind of goes through Hell/Inferno, up Mount Purgatorio, and out into Paradiso to finally see God. But one thing that you may not quite realise is that, well, obviously we've got Rodan as our wonderful weaponsmith, and owner of the Gates of Hell pub, or bar, if you want to call it that. I'm going to call it a pub. But Rodan, who was a French artist, Auguste Rodin, created a sculpture, which is the Gates of Hell, which is basically, I think, where a lot of the whole ideas are coming from. And that sculpture is based upon a scene from Dante's Inferno, so the first book of the Divine Comedy. And it's actually really impressive. It's like 6 meters high, 4 meters wide, 1 meter deep, has 180 figures on it, and it is just stunning. And yeah, it's just amazing. And also, with the Divine Comedy, it does get used quite a lot in the Bayonetta universe, because obviously Paradiso, Inferno, Purgatorio, all that jazz, as well as the Gates of Hell. But it should also be noted that it's a huge influence on Devil May Cry. So obviously Dante, the main character of the demon-killing hero, is called Dante, and his brother is Virgil. So Hideki Kamiya is something that I really kind of should probably ask him on Twitter, is kind of what made the Divine Comedy such an influence on his works. It's just something that really interests me. Because, I mean, the Divine Comedy is a huge thing within kind of religious understanding in the medieval period. Like, lots of people knew it. But nowadays it's not really that big in the public consciousness, because, I mean, who cares about medieval theology these days? It just doesn't really happen. But I should also point out, we are facing against Golem, which is a very different form of Golem to the one that we faced in the original Bayonetta. This is definitely a much more difficult Golem than the last game, because it's a lot more aggressive, and also a lot harder to read, which is frustrating. But as with the first game, it will transform into versions of your infernal demons. And some of them are really difficult to dodge. The one which I think is based on Diomedes is arguably the hardest one, because it's either that or I think it's Mictanlethicusly or something. I'll go into it later when I actually remember to look it up. It's one of the infernal demons that doesn't get seen a whole lot. But either way,
if you need to learn how to talk to a lady, ask your mum.
Another fun Gates of Hell fact type thing is that the Gates of Hell, well, obviously Divine Comedy and all that, do turn up in a lot of places. Basically, there's lots of stories of places where the Gates of Hell actually physically exist. So, in ancient Greece and Rome and stuff, Hades kidnapped Persephone from a field in Sicily and led her to the underworld through a cleft in the earth. Orpheus travelled to the Greek underworld in search of Eurydice by entering a cave at Terneron, which is on the southern tip of the Peloponnese. Aeneas visited the underworld, entering through a cave at the edge of Lake Avernus on the Bay of Naples, and Odysseus visited the underworld, entering through Lake Acheron in northwest Greece. And then by the time you get to like the medieval period, basically in the middle of the Roman Forum is another entrance. Mount Etna in Sicily was considered an entryway, which links back to the Hades myth. Icelanders believed that Mount Hekla was a gateway to hell, but apparently the most famous is St. Patrick's Purgatory in Loder, County Donegal, Ireland. Anywho, in the past, God watched over the human world all by himself. The human world is always in a state of flux. Time flows endlessly, bringing death and new life. That which disappears is eventually forgotten. God felt mercy for existence and tried to grant them eternity with the remembrance of time. At intervals, he would quietly appear in the human world and observe creation, slowly building remembrances of time. He created a special place to store the great deal of memories he had created. This place was known as the Garden of God, and described in children's stories as a place in the depths of Lake Noatun. It is said to be full of places and things found in the lives of ancient civilizations cut off from the ebb of time. Something tells me that it wouldn't be the best place for your normal citizen to go wandering around in. Even if the whole thing is just made up, I wouldn't be me if I didn't at least try and find it. And that is essentially what we are dealing with right now. Because this is essentially the same location as where we met Loki. And we get a wonderful cube thing to play with. But, of course, angels are going to get in our way before we can actually make any progress. And once again, we get the wonderful Tomorrow's Mine to play with. It is a great song, and I love it dearly, but I do really, really wish that we had more runs of Moon River, because I do think I prefer it as a song. Anyway, here we have Allegiance, which is by far the most difficult of all of the Centaur enemies. Because he blocks, he's very quick, he's very powerful, he's just an all-round really dickish enemy. And if you want to complete all of the Muspelheims in the game, you're going to have to learn this guy quite a lot. Because he is involved in what is arguably one of, if not, the hardest Muspelheim in the entire game on second climax. It's just so frustrating. Like, just... When I first played the game, I think there were... Of the Muspelheims that I found, there was only 2 or 3 that I didn't have the patience to complete. Both of which were right at the end of the game. Because at that point it was just like, I just want to be done! I love you, game, but I need to be finished now. There was probably a very good reason for that desire to be finished. Family issues and so on, but it was just like, game, just finish, please. I can't be bothered to put up with these really, really dickish Muspelheims. Because, yeah, it's just evil. Now, if you run all the way back to where we opened the chapter, we get another verse, and it's a wonderful hidden verse. Thankfully, it really doesn't take long to get back here, and it's not that bad. But obviously, the original Bayonetta kind of really, really enjoyed playing that sort of stuff on you. Like, my god. Backtracking for optional verses was its thing. And it was just ridiculous. I think it's also around this point that I'm starting to get a little bit fed up with Chernobog. It's a great weapon. And it can be very useful. But you've got to be very, very on it to successfully get, high scores. And I'm pretty sure that very soon I'm going to be attempting to stop using it. And before we continue, we've got another wonderful journal echo. Guardian. God made a special place to protect his remembrances of time, which came to be known as the Garden of God. The Guardian needed a strong protector to watch over his creations. The Guardian was a robot-like soldier built to obey only the orders of its creator. It could change its form freely to whatever would defeat its opponent in the swiftest manner possible. With time, humans discovered the fearful soldier God had created and imitated this technology to build their own soldier of war, the Golem. While Golem was originally intended to be used as a protector of their homelands, its power became too great to control. Eventually, mankind was forced to stop it off in another dimension. As for the original Guardian that God created, what it's doing now is anyone's guess. Who knows, it might still be lying in wait somewhere, keeping its territory safe from intruders. It's not safe to be loitering around and all that jazz.